Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Nicholas Davenport, the CEO and founder of Mind Body One. Now, I bring you this workshop, 7 concepts that every mental coach should know. Now, it's not relegated just to mental coaches. You can be a mental health counselor, a psychologist. You can be a neurofeedback specialist, a neuroperformance coach, a cognitive scientist, even adjacent fields like fitness and strength and conditioning. The main premise is these 7 concepts will help you not only build your brand, your business, but understand how to be a better practitioner to better serve whatever demographic that you work with. Now, Mind Body One for the last decade has created different programs, educational content, social media resources, and applications so you can add it to your repertoire. Or if you're a client, we work with them as well. We've been able to create these different parameters to help people perform in different industries and get their mind right, as we always say. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is storytelling. Now, as a practitioner, specifically in the mental coaching field, you learn different techniques, different concepts, different methodologies. For example, self-talk. This is probably one of the most used outside of like goal setting and motivation. But if you understand the concept, how to integrate it to your sessions, teach it to a client, that's great. That's that foundational level that we all need as practitioners, right? But it has to go beyond that, because at the end of the day, you're giving this person an experience. They need to feel once they've talked with you, whether it's the first session or 10 sessions, that they left with something more than just some textbook things they can take home and journal and do for homework. Because people don't like being taught. And I know this may sound backwards, but bear with me, because when I say they don't need to be taught or they don't want to be taught, it's more so they want to learn what you have to give them. See the difference there? It sounds like it's not, but it is different. They want to learn what you have to give them, but not sound as they're being taught a lesson. Now, granted, it's going to come off that way to some extent, but what story are you telling? Me personally, I like to use anecdotes and analogies. I used to be a musician and a rapper back in the day, so I love to use punchlines and things to tie together, to paint a picture, because that's what you need to do. They need to understand not just the concept, but how does this make sense for them and in their life? Because once you understand that, then you can take it further and get into the nitty gritty. Because a lot of times people get lost in the techniques and the skills that the person who's doing them just saying, is this just something else I'm getting to do in my busy life already? Because remember, your job is to find a solution, get from point A to point B. Now, obviously, there's different ways to do that by painting a picture or making more visual or telling a story that gets them to where they need to be. You need to use your own personality, because some people are more outgoing. They like to tell stories like I do and use analogies and anecdotes, but some people, they want to just get straight to the point and teach skills and techniques. And you can still do that, but make sure it's accommodating to your client and it makes sense for them. Now, this kind of leads into the next point, building your digital presence, because online content creation, social media, I say this is almost like the boogeyman. A lot of people tell me it's too tedious, too time consuming, too mundane, whatever you want to call it, meticulous. I get it. I do it every day, so I understand. Right now, I'm recording this for you guys, so content is a big part of my business. But then you got to ask yourself, just like you would tell one of your clients, is you got to understand the good, the bad, the ups, the downs, the things that aren't necessarily the most fun, and you got to still do them. And just how you want to practice what you preach. Why would you not do this with your digital online presence? Because now in 2023, the typical just paper or even just messaging people online is still not enough. You need to give content, and content marketing is probably one of the best ways, because it's most part free. All you really need is a phone. Now, me, I have equipment, I have cameras. That's where I'm at right now, but you don't have to have all that. You just need your phone, because most phones, I would say almost all today, have a camera on them, so you can record different things to teach your audience. Because it's not just about building a presence so people can say who you are and then buy what you're selling. That's definitely part of it. But I'll be honest, most of my sales or the contracts or the experiences I get to have because of my online presence is because I built value. And that's the first reason why you post content. Because before anyone wants to buy your services or book a free consult, wherever it is, your ebook, they need to trust you. That's the biggest part of any business or any brand is trust. So if they don't trust you, why should they listen to you, let alone buy from you? And there's a lot of noise in the industry or just in general in the world where there's people doing random dances online or things that are distracting. So how do you think you fall in there? So you have to really build that value, because once they see they can trust you, to see one video, one post, one story, reel, whatever it is, whatever medium you do it, they'll start saying that, oh, this person is invested. Now, I'm not saying that that's all you do. You still have to be able to be good at your job and implement what you're doing. But this gives them the idea that I can at least trust that they're doing it. Now, that's one part. But outside of just trusting your brand and content, understand you can educate, it gives them something to see. Think like, say, Netflix. You ever see a show that you just got into and you started binging and it was already done and had like 9, 10 seasons and you end up watching maybe half of them in the first day? This is how it should be with your content because let's say I come across your page. Your services are great, but I don't know that yet. I see 4 posts. I watch it. Oh, pretty cool. Watch the next one. Pretty cool. Before you know it, within a minute or two, depending on how long these posts are, I'm done. Then guess what? I'm going somewhere else. That's just how the world works. We have shorter attention spans. So that's why you want it. Think of like a distribution. You don't want it all to be right here and go outward. You want to have something that engages and then a long distribution across because now they're just going down the rabbit hole and knowing that, oh, there's more I can go to. They might even be overwhelmed and they have to come back later. Guess what? Engagement. That's what we want. So that's another part why you want to post content and be consistent with it because it builds the value, it builds the trust, but it gives them something to see down the road. Because remember, if they like what they see from you, they're going to want more. And if you don't have any more, once it's gone, guess what? They're going to go somewhere else. And that's not what we want. So having that digital presence is important. And don't give yourself an excuse that it's hard or tedious. Guess what? Every part of your business or brand building is that. And it could look a lot of different ways. You know, there's YouTube videos where it's more longer form content where you want to go more in depth, maybe 10 to 20-minute videos, maybe a full length podcast. There's a lane for that. And the beauty is you can use that to clip up to give you more content. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. So you can see how it all translates. So it's not just about giving the people just, oh, I want to see this person. No, it's giving the authority that you should be in your given demographic and in your field. And once you establish that, you can go further. The other mediums such as like TikTok, Instagram, tweets even, they're a little shorter. A lot of people emphasize word posts. I see a lot in the mental industry, but a lot of people don't like to read. So you got to have those, mix it in, but you have a format. And we do this a lot with our stuff where we have the written stuff, we have the videos, we have the more playful personality type things where you can show who you are. Just like I said, have a story to tell, show your personality, do this through your content too. It should never feel like you're teaching unless it's something like this, like a workshop where you are illustrating some clear-cut points. But if it's like content, you want to paint a picture, you want to make it vivid, you want to make it come to life. So make sure you work on that digital presence. Now, I want to know how much technology that you use in your services or in your practice because we're in a modern age and there's so many different tools that can help us, especially in this industry. The mental training industry has evolved a lot in the last few years, and there's a lot of neurotech that's out there that can help you read brain waves, HRV, heart rate variability. And there's other tools that are cognitive training apps that help with working memory, impulse control, decision making. There's other apparatus like Fit-Light where you have to do reactionary tasks. There's low-tech tools like Hiko sticks. So there's a lot of different things. And I might ask, what are you using? And I would suggest most of them because integrating tech into your practice helps not only give you different things to utilize, but it's more engaging for the client. Because remember, you're giving an experience. So understanding it and how to use them, because there's a lot of techniques that go with them. So let's say, for example, HRV, that involves understanding what heart rate variability even is. Once you learn that and understand it, you can integrate, okay, how well is my clients recovering between sessions? Do we do some box breathing drills and see if they're improving? If I see an improvement, now I can tell them, hey, you've gotten better. That's data. Those are numbers. But also, you can pry a little bit into what's going on that you may not see directly from what they tell you. Oh, I've been stressed lately, but they're not going in depth. And you see that if the variability is not where it should be, then you can respond with, have you been getting enough sleep? Have you been eating well? Have you been overworking physically? Whatever it may be, it gives you that insight. Me personally, I use a lot of them. I use HRV. I use neurofeedback. I use Fit-Light. So now I can see their applied approach, how they physically respond to stimuli. And if I have standardized tests, I can know if they're getting better or worse. Or it can just be something subjective that I can watch. Because a lot of my tasks, like I have my grid app where I'll see their disposition, their mannerisms, how they respond when things don't go their way. It tells a lot and it paints such a vivid picture. So that's personally what I take the most from using my tech outside the obvious objective analytics, but seeing how they act in real time because I'm big on making the intangible tangible. And that's something hard to do in our industry. But I think that's where technology can kind of bridge that gap a little bit. So try to find a tech that you can use, because I'm not saying to go overboard and learn a completely new skill, but use something that maybe relates more to what you want to do, adapt that and use it in your practice. And now you have another tool to engage the client. And people love this stuff. It's great and sometimes even fun depending on what it is. And it actually gives you some things you can run with and measure to know, are we really getting better to some degree? It's not the end all be all, but it gives you at least an idea to give you a picture of what you can do with the client. This fourth one is probably one of the worst ones too, because I say go beyond sport. Most people who are mental coaches, especially if they're in sports psychology, the name is right there, sport, then psychology. But this is not a true picture, and we all know this. Performance is what we really do. And everything's a performance. This could be a person working a job, a CEO, or a manager, or an everyday worker. It could be a policeman, a firefighter, a soldier, someone in the military. It really can be endless who you can actually work with, musicians even. So there's so many lanes you can go. But what I've seen, consulting with I've probably talked to over 100 practitioners, helping them with their business, and they all seem to cling to sport because it's usually what we know. I get it. You're a former athlete or you work with nothing but athletes. And it's not saying it's easier, but it's what you're used to. But going back to how you would actually do it with your clients, you tell them what? Step out their comfort zone, right? You need to do the same, not just because I want you to try it. Yeah, I do. But think from the business standpoint. We're getting more on the business side now. You need to have different ways to make money. And you may not always be able to do it through athletes. The market share is a lot smaller. Although there's a lot of athletes, think about how many people are in this industry. Think about organizationally. There's only so many colleges, only so many pro organizations, and usually the lower levels don't have much funding to use your services, which you can still work with them, of course. I work with youth athletes all the time and youth kids and all types of demographics that are young, but sometimes it may not work for the business model. Now, knowing that there's so much saturation of the industry and so little jobs or opportunities, you have to start branching out, helping someone pass a class using mental skills training, or help someone focus more who has Alzheimer's with cognitive training. You see how you go beyond sport. You don't have to abandon it. Don't be scared. Don't think that, well, I can't get back to this, or do it simultaneously. The name of the game is utilizing your skill set. That's what we're here for. We're here to help people. Now, granted, if your priority is sports, stay there. I'm not saying step out of it. Not everyone's meant, like myself, my niche is kind of having multiple niches. I work with athletes, military, active aging, kids. Our business has gotten to the point where we work with all these demographics regularly. But I can't lie and can't say I can't attribute a majority of my success to the fact that I actually went about it in a different way and I didn't just relegate myself just to one market. But like I said, take that with a grain of salt and utilize it as it makes sense to you and your business and your interests and skill sets. That way you can at least have different options. Now, that kind of segue into the next point, have different business models. A lot of people just have the simple B2C. Now, if you're not familiar with B2C, there's B2C, which is business to client. There's B2B, which is business to business. There's SaaS, software as a service, and B2B SaaS, which is business to business, software as a service. Now, if you're familiar with little to none of these terms, that's okay. But that's why I want to talk about them, because with a B2B, now you're giving other practitioners like yourself things and resources that they can utilize to help their services. For example, I have courses. This workshop is meant to teach you things. So I'm working B2B. Or you provide services that you can do with other businesses. You're not working directly with one client. Now, B2C is the typical way. You get a one-on-one session, do a 30 to an hour consult, you get paid. You might do some packages, but this revenue stream is the most typical, but it's also the hardest to build up. And you think about it from a timing and a pacing standpoint, you can only do so much in one day. So even if you're booked from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or even 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., there's only so many hours in a day and there's only people you can work with. And then it's not that easy to get clients. It's just something I feel I touch on a lot, but I don't know if other people in the industry do. Getting a client, acquiring clients in this industry is not easy. It's not because people don't want it. When you think about a sale, just like I said, building value, building trust, people know that mental health or mental skills or any kind of mental performance can be beneficial to their life. People might hit you up right now, but then when you get to the part of selling them, they might balk at the price because they don't really see the full value. They get the value, but they don't see all of it. So if you charge 80 to 100 a session, they might say, hey, that's way out my budget. Okay, that's fine. I have different revenue streams. So maybe you have a small package where you do less sessions, or let's take it away from B2C. You might have a workbook that you sell that's $20. Most people will be able to afford $20, but guess what? That's a different revenue stream. Or you might have team consults to get more bang for your buck, because if you have 10 people, I can reduce the price. Each person pays or the team pays, then everyone gets some coaching or some work without giving more. So those are pretty straightforward. But if you want to go even further, A B2B, we explain, is working with other businesses, but a SaaS is a software as a service. Now, this is a little more technical, and this is something you have to really put more time and investment, but it's not out the question. I have apps that we're developing that can be used as its own software for other practitioners can utilize it as well. So that's that B2B SaaS. And also just a software as a service as itself. It could be a product like a site for booking coaching clients. So that's just another lane, but it's only relegated and limited to you. I know it's like, oh, I didn't go to school to do that. That's fine. But guess what? You probably didn't go to school to be a businessman or a businesswoman either. But the thing is, you are that, right? So you learning or you already doing it. So you should look it into at that point, because the more revenue streams, the more things you can bring in. That means if one's not going, imagine, let's use this example, an analogy. One of the things I love to do analogies, right? Matter of fact, let's look at a store that only sells water. You go in there and it's nothing but racks and racks full of water. That's cool if it sells water, but what if you need something else? What if you're hungry? Guess what? There might be another store that has food, but it only has food. Cool. But if you're thirsty, you need to go back to water. But what business thrives better? The one that has more to offer. It doesn't mean you have to have everything. We're not trying to necessarily be Walmart or Amazon, but it's giving you more options to choose from. So that's why you should have multiple revenue streams, because if one's not going, you have others, because the name of the game of business is having working capital. You need to have money to operate, whether it's just simple things like going from new equipment, or maybe you need to take a course, whatever it is, pay a salary if you have a staff. But the point is, you need to have that capital, and the more revenue streams you have in, you keep it always going, just like a river. A river needs to keep flowing. If it doesn't, it dries up, and we don't want that to happen. Now, this next one goes into becoming an expert. Now, we know the term expert in general, but how we say expert is exceptionally expanding professional enrichment, rationale, and techniques. Simply put, you need to be very, very, very good at what you do. And that's just a mean in one area. Now, like I said, you don't need to be the jack of all trades, but you can be a Joe of all trades. Now, what does this mean? So it's another acronym. So you can see my teaching style in this, right? So a jack of all trades, think of the word jack as an acronym, just average common knowledge of all trades. Now, a Joe of all trades is justifiably optimal experience of all trades. Now, you see where I'm going with this? So a jack, they just have average, like they're okay here, not so great there. They're great at this one thing, but nothing on another. That's fine to be, but it's not as consistent. Now, the Joe, they're justifiably optimal. Optimal means you're at the place where you should be. That's what optimal is. People think about maximal, which is the most. You think about minimal, which is the least, but optimal is where we should be. And you can be that in other experiences and aspects in different demographics. Like me personally, my main focus in undergrad was cognitive and personality psychology. I did a little bit of mental health counseling in my master's before I switched to sports psychology. And then after that, I did clinical psychology. And then I got into neurofeedback and neuroscience and cognitive science more so again. So I got a little bit of optimal information on all of them where I can utilize at a decent proportion. Where I make my experience better. So that's one part of it, just being good at what you do, like I said, but that's not enough. Now, what about actual experience? If you're an expert at something, it means you've probably done it a while and you've done it in different capacities. So internships is the lowest hanging fruit, but you can only do those for so long because obviously you need income. Now, you can do them while working a full-time job. I would always say if you're working a full-time job or a part-time job before you get full on to your career, because that's the main idea of this. You want to get into this as 100% your career. You want everything that revolves into you making money having to do with your experience in the mental coaching or sports psych or just the brain and behavior science field, right? So that's what this is for. So getting that experience means maybe working a job that's not your dream job, but it's adjacent to what you want to do. For me, I worked as a neurofeedback specialist at an addiction center that expanded to 3 to 4 centers. And I worked under the head psychologist who owned them all. So I got a lot of experience doing intakes. And I also did cognitive testing. But with the neurofeedback side of things, I learned a whole new skill set, but I was only making $11 an hour. And this was not really paying my bill. It wasn't doing a lot. I had to work supplemental jobs. But since it had something to do with it, I got so much more out of it. So I made kind of my own internship or paid internship. And actually the other supplemental jobs were still things in the industry. I worked as a strength coach at a college, and I also worked at a psychiatric hospital to supplement the other stuff with the neurofeedback work. So that way I indirectly learned strength and conditioning work. I learned how to work with drug addiction center as well as the psychiatric hospital. This gave me all this experience. And that's what you got to do to be an expert. You need to not only just learn what you need from the book side and the foundational side, but you need to put it into practice. And that's this third part, putting into practice beyond just getting the work experience. What are you doing day to day? Foundationally, you know the stuff, but how much people have you really done this stuff with? Sometimes it's going to look like a paid gig. Sometimes it's going to be pro bono. Sometimes it's going to be a friend, but you need to get out there testing different theories and concepts that you come up with. Yes, you need to come up with your own things. It's not enough just to repeat what you hear the top sports psych or the top mental coach or brain coach or neuroscientist is saying. You need to go out there and do your own work. Now, it doesn't mean you have to rewrite anything or reinvent the wheel, but that creativity, if I get into a little bit of the neuroscience of it, you're stimulating your brain to be more creative, which will make you more solution focused and come up with better ideas in the long run. And what works and doesn't stick, move forward. And what does, you can utilize later. So it's a win-win no matter how you put it. So becoming an expert, that is a necessity for you to do, because if you're not and you're just regurgitating what you hear, yes, you can get far in the industry as far as understanding the basics, depending on if you're working just maybe with an organization, you need to just cover clientele in whatever demographic. But if you're more so leaning towards building your brand and becoming your own entity, you need to really get on it that way. Now, this last part, building the brand. So I've mentioned it indirectly throughout some of the parts, but I saved it for last because once you understand all of that, then you can start talking more about, okay, how do we make this all come together? How do I sell this, make it marketable, make it good for the industry I want to work with? Now, the thing is with me, I say you need to have a brand before you have a business, because you might think, why isn't that contradictory? Or isn't the same thing if I have a business and I have a brand? No. All you really have is an entity. If you register an LLC or a sole proprietorship, whatever it is, you just got something on file. And a lot of people, I think, just like their name on the door, which is fine. But until you make an actual brand, what do you really have? Now, let's use an analogy. Say you want to start a business. You start a restaurant. Ooh, that's great. Restaurant. Wait, what kind of restaurant? Okay, let's say pizza. All right, we're getting a little more specific, but do you have a brand yet? Nah. Okay, what about, let's say, a pizza place that's more geared towards original recipes with like fried chicken toppings, things are not normal. Okay, we're getting more of a brand. You see where this is going? And it's the same thing with you as a mental coach, because let's say like Domino's, that's a pizza place. You think of the Domino's logo before you think of the actual pizza, but it leaves that mark in your head. That's the brand. Let's say something, let's use one of the biggest brands we can probably think of, Apple. It goes beyond just technology and computers and phones. You think of Apple, you think of a conglomerate. It just transcends it all. Matter of fact, the logo, the name itself doesn't really tell you what it does. Like me, Mind Body One, that's a little more on the nose. But even with me, for the longest, my brand was convoluted and I had to figure it out. But I got it to where it needed to be because I understood and established what it should be. I saw that people didn't understand, okay, they hear the mind part, they hear the body part. Sometimes they even forgot the one. They just say mind and body because that's where the brain just assimilated to. And that's a whole other topic. But the thing is, I had to make sure I illustrate the brand so they didn't do that. And it was an uphill battle. It was really difficult because people didn't know what they were really getting when they came to me. Was it psychology? Was it mental coaching? Was it cognitive training? Was it a workout? Was it fitness? And it kind of was a mixture of a lot of that, sometimes together, sometimes as standalone. So I've made it my duty over the last decade to paint the picture, to build the brand and give them the value where they understood it is all of that. Some people didn't know what to pick. And I'm like, I don't want you to pick. And now we are at the point where we are. And now they see Mind, Body One. And now they can understand, oh, this is what they do. It's literally the mind, the body as one, because that's how we really work in real time, right? So when it comes to your brand, what do people see when they look at your page? This goes back to that digital presence. What story are you telling? That goes back to your personality shining and painting a picture. See how this all comes full circle and ties together to building your brand? What is your business models? Do you only work with athletes? Do you only work with clients directly? Do you do remote? Do you do ebooks? Do you have workshops? What are you actually putting out into this world? Do you efficiently utilize technology? That can even be in your brand. I have individuals I've consulted with where their brand revolves around a certain piece of equipment, say like neurofeedback. I mentioned that before. If you're not familiar with that, it's when they connect the EEG to your headset and you do different tasks to keep the brain waves in a certain parameter. Helps to effectively think more clearly, helps with anxiety and different things. But basically, that could be a brand in itself. So you see how it all ties together. So you need to understand, what are you trying to accomplish? What story you're trying to tell? What impact are you trying to leave on people beyond just saying, making them think better or feel better after a session, helping with their sport? It should be way more than that. So before we finish, let's go over a quick recap. One, tell your story. People need to understand who you are, your personality, your style. You need to paint a picture and illustrate, just like an artist would, what you're trying to get across. And the person needs to understand it beyond just the techniques and skills that you learned in college or in a certification. They need to understand what you're trying to exemplify to them. Now, two, build that digital presence. People just not need to see your face everywhere. They need to understand that your words mean something, that you have a clear-cut brand, that they know when they hear you, see you, they know what they're getting. And if they're new to your page, they can get a lot more value out of you, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to give them ways to be better. And the more you can do that, the better they can get better, and the more they can trust you to do what you need to do with them. Now, three, are utilizing technology, whatever that may look like. Is it neurofeedback? Is it heart rate variability? Is it using reactionary system, the cognitive testing? Whatever it is, find where that can fit. I'm not saying adopt all of them, but find one that you really like, that you believe in, understand the rationale, teach yourself, be efficient before you even try to test it out as an actual business model. And then you can bring that value and have objective ways to give your clients value, or use it to see the subjective ways. One of the biggest things I think comes from it, like I mentioned before, is being able to see subjective measures like self-talk, body language, disposition, because a lot of times this invokes similar responses. And I always say, I'd rather them do it in here than out there. So think about it. You give them the technique, the self-talk, the visualization, the box breathing, whatever it is, you see them practicing it before they do one of your tasks that you set up at your facility or in a session with the technology. That's very beneficial. And that way they can rehearse it in real time versus going out there and then they say, did it work or not? No, we saw it in an actual measurable task that they could do. Now, four, going beyond sport. Don't limit yourself just to athletes. Yes, that can be your main focus. Yes, that might be your bread and butter. But the more you open up, all the top mental coaches that I'm friends with, I can say, they work with a lot of different demographics. Matter of fact, their biggest demographics typically aren't athletes. And like I said, there's many reasons for that. There's limitations on how many people can get athletes, but it's also how much can afford to do your services. So that's going to limit too. Now you're working with corporations, CEOs, you're working with just managers, you're working with people in the military. It gives you a better chance, which leads into what five was. What was your business models? Understanding, are you B2C? Are you just serving you to the client, doing one-on-ones? Cool. But do you have other revenue streams? Do you do B2B? Do you serve other businesses? So there's different ways for that to look. Providing other streams of income, different products, different material, different services gives you the benefit when one isn't necessarily selling that much. You have the others to keep you afloat because you always want to have something going and have that working capital so you can maintain. Now, six, that was being an expert. That's being able to understand what you're doing, be one of the best at it. Doesn't mean like a competition, but when I say be the best, you're so proficient that there's no doubt that what you're saying is good to go. That goes back to that building the trust. So being expert is getting that experience, whether it's on the job training, doing an actual job, an internship, or like I prefer, making your own way and learning from that. And like I said, if it doesn't work that direction, you're going to have something from it that's going to help you down the road. I've created so many different concepts. I've created so many different apps and different tools, things that some haven't seen the light of day. Some have, and some saw later on. So you see, it's everything I talk about is what I do, and it has worked for me. And I've grown Mind Body One to what it is today, where we work with so many populations from big to small, young to old, pro sports to amateur, military, etc. So that's what you want to do. And then to finish it all off, build your brand. Brand before business. If you already have your business, work on make sure that brand illustrates what you do, how it sets you apart from everyone else, and how it can take you beyond just what it looks like on paper. Because when people read your name, that's cool. But you want it to the point where when they hear it, it's already there. They know what they're getting. And if they don't know what they're getting, they're going to be blown away when they find out. So this was the 7 concepts that every mental coach should know. Make sure you check out all of our other resources, our courses, our apps, our tools, our equipment, and follow us on all social medias. As always, get your mind right.